around it at the time. But they were saying that there was going to be a huge shift, and there were going to be two worlds. And one world would continue to evolve and live in harmony with each other in the earth and move on. And the other earth would continue with the old paradigm, the old program, like two parallel worlds at a junction, at a certain junction point. Does your work reflect any of that?
Yeah, well, that kind of goes with the kiliocosm, because the kiliocosm is the thousand space-time possibility. So, that possibility of, the old world, so to speak, versus the new heavens, the new earth, is one reality. But we think that there's even more than that. I mean, there's multiple possibilities, myriad possibilities, to be more exact. So, I mean, I think that that's accurate, but I think that that's even limited to say that there's just two. We're saying that there's like 1,000 possibilities, because those are the possibilities in the universe. We're expanding. We always expand the universe a lot more than most people, as you know, because there are multiple dimensions. There's multiple realities. There's beings that don't exist in physical form. There's beings that exist even as just thought, and there's beings that exist that can be in multiple bodies at the same time. So all these myriad possibilities are there for all of us to also experience.
So we need a whole new textbook in biology explaining that which we see in this physical form, but also in the transphysical, in what we will call the higher or the lower spectrum of the infrared or the ultraviolet, that there are other life forms, although we may just touch upon them briefly. In certain higher expanded states of consciousness, we are looking at something that is far more dramatic and real in the fact that there are actual physical life forms out there in the universe in their own realm of physics that have learned to come into our dimension through hyperspace travel, can materialize, can share with us gifts of science and insight that we need to survive as a planetary humanity. And I think this is the most exciting area, is the new sciences, the whole new direction that we're moving into. And this is why we've called our academy the Academy for Future Science, because we believe that there always will be a future and that there always will be science of consciousness that will guide us constructively and positively into using our options very wisely. Even though people will choose to, so we say, sleep and fall back into old habits, we realize that the higher intelligence will use, as it were, the avant-garde of the human community to make contact with and to establish a firm basis of change that in turn will feed down to those who are probably less aware or do not really understand the full picture of the cosmic future.
And I wanted to mention, you mentioned yourself, James, Orion, and we feel that Orion, in terms of our own stellar galaxy, is a gateway, that it's actually a threshold point. It's kind of a way out into some of these other dimensional realms. Now, Orion is out in our own arm of the Milky Way galaxy, unlike Sagittarius, which is more in the center. So it's very interesting that we're so close to the Orion constellation, in which we consider like a stargate. I don't know if that ties into some of the information you've gotten as well.
Yeah, it definitely does, because Malia, she was with the Orion Council of Light that I connected with. It blew my mind, because I saw your one of your videos, and where you had a picture, and it was identical. In your, in one of your videos. I'm trying to remember which one that was, but it just, it was almost like took that picture and put it inside the video. Like perfect. I mean, she had looked like she had a bathing cap on, like a white cap, and she had gold bars above her head that were actually suspended. And she said it's a form of technology they use, a spiritual technology to initiate.
That's right, and that is also part of the language code that we are being taught from a higher level of what we call a cosmic syntax. What we're seeing in the various crop circles of the world are symbols that some would say are purely archaic without meaning. Others would say they're symbols of renewal that are part of a musical and mathematical language that we're being taught. I had the pleasure of knowing the late Gerald Hawkins, who was a very, very gifted mathematician and musicologist. He actually represented the British government in the United States in Washington, D.C. years ago, but used the IBM computer to analyze Stonehenge. And he told me privately he felt that these symbols were part of a much larger language system that we were being taught. And I, for one, know in our recent experiences in Europe, in Africa, and South America, that these symbols are now beginning to appear in the developing countries, giving them an opportunity to realize that they're not going to be left out of the equation, that all of us are in a learning tutorial, so to speak. We're beginning to put the missing pieces together, connect the dots, and this is why I like your work, because you are so lovingly open to the multidimensionality of how the human experience is growing, and at the same time you realize you have to bring the experts together, whether they're Egyptologists or anthropologists or musicologists or just plain ordinary folk, to see that you have to put this into something that's really going to help the new society work and function in a way that will take us beyond the old money games, the old political games, and the old scientific games of hide and seek.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw some things. I don't want to go too much into that because it's kind of a bummer. But you know, with the bankers and everything else they've done, and they have these hidden funds that the people don't know about. The states have them, and the feds have them, and they're in the $400 trillion range. Some of these things, and it's just unbelievable. There's no reason whatsoever why we should have lack or poverty or homelessness or people starving in this country. It's just a form of insanity that's going on right now.
Yeah, but we all have to do our part, which is important. And you look at the bankers, I mean, they certainly did not do their part in trying to help humanity. And it really is, I think I always go back to the fact of near-death experiences as recorded by many people around the world. And the first thing that's asked of them is, how did you spend your energy while you were on the earth? And I think, it's always a shock to them, what did you learn and what did you do for others? And that's really the trial that we're in right now, and everybody needs to ask themselves that question, whether someone else has something more or not. I mean, that's our responsibility. Each one has to have that responsibility.
So we're working also with a new book that's come out, The 72 Living Divine Names of the Most High, which is a use of certain geometry with a beautiful multidimensional illustration of how each divine name has certain counterparts cosmically. And when you put this into pictures or cosmograms, each page begins to shine three-dimensionally. And those listeners out there, we highly encourage you to go to our website, keysofenoch.org, and acquire this wonderful book, which is illustrated. It's using the ancient Aramaic, Hebrew, and Greek names for the divine, but on a higher level of musical and scientific awareness of how we can graduate now through our mental space of inner attunement and then ultimately be prepared for these changes that will ultimately come, we believe, in this generation.
And we feel some of these names can be used for divine protection. Like you mentioned, you did your own clearing last night. In actuality, there's also names that can be used to clear that energy and to bring in a higher positive energy and to make sure that the entities you're dealing with are in the light.
And the people that we've shared this book with in Africa and South America have invited us into their intertribal ceremonies and experiences because they can feel the vibratory change in our aura and the way we work with them, which is through unconditional love, through higher music, and through higher recognition that we all form branches in the greater tree of life. If we can use these branches, then we bypass conventional language and we go into higher language. We go into what we call the language of light or transformational linguistics, where we begin to actually see ourselves in inner dialogue and conversation. So again, this is a beautiful illustrated book which will take you to different parts of the world, showing you the multidimensionality of how sacred geometries unfold.
Yeah, I heard an African chant once, and they're going, Aea, Aea, like this. It was really interesting. And when I heard that, I said, that's interesting, because when I went through the teachings of the Inner Christ, they had a being that they called the feminine aspect of God was called Aea.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I always see these connections, Tibetan, Native American, they have very similar words for very similar beings or deities and belief systems, and it's just amazing how it all interlocks when you start getting outside of your box,
Well, We do feel that there used to be one language, and even now one of the most popular topics, strange enough, in Japan is the connection between the Japanese language and the Hebrew language, which I think is pretty strange, but that's what they're all talking about. And we were recently in New Zealand, and one of their god's name is Yao, and that's very similar to like the Yod-Heh-Vod-Heh or Jehovah connected with the Hebrew. So there's this universal sound vibration.
You're talking about the concretized forms of the divine name.
Yeah.
And we've been working with musicians in all these cultures worldwide, and we realize that they all have the seed syllables of vibration, and that this is the higher language that's not recognized in the conventional mundane language of day-to-day existence, that we all come out of vibrations, and we all